So it's Pete and Anthony, huh?
Yep.
Yes.
And there's Pete.
All right, guys, it's Anthony from AB Fitness Center here, along with my co-host, Big Pete Kacharian. And today we have a really, really special guest with us on here today. We have Frank Zane. Frank Zane is a bodybuilding legend. This guy is by far has one of the best physiques ever. And if you ask my opinion, I think even better than the guys nowadays. So I'd like to welcome on Frank Zane. Frank Zane, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
I'm doing just fine, thank you.
So Frank joins us all the way from sunny San Diego. So on the opposite side of the U.S. here.
Yeah, it's very nice right now. It's about low 60s temperature. We went for a walk this morning and around Lake Murray, which is a nearby lake, and it's really pretty. And we got our aerobic activity in.
Very good, very good. So Frank, for some people that might be listening to this, they might not have ever heard of Frank Zane, or may not even be sure of what the Golden Era actually was. So give us a little background on who you are, you know, what bodybuilding was to you back then, and what you're kind of doing now, how old you are, because, you know, listening to this, you're still fit and in shape.
Well, I'll be 78 years old next week sometime, I think a little week after that. And, you know, I still work out. I do something every day. I have a fabulous gym, and I go down there every day and do something. Could be an upper body workout, leg workout. Could be some aerobic activity in that as well. But there's nothing I can't do there. The equipment I have is modeled after equipment I've used over the years that I really liked. And so I get a good feel from them. I have a lot of machines. And my workout is a combination of using machines which are strapped with rubber cables to give me resistance from stretching as well as the weight itself, and stretching between sets. And I do about 12, 15 reps on every set, 1 to 2 sets per exercise. It's pretty instinctive. I don't write it down anymore. I'm not keeping track of anything. It's just, I do it. You know, it's part of my day.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad. And I know a lot of people hearing this are going to hear like, oh, he's that young and he's still training. I mean, how many years have you been exercising now?
Since I was 14. So you can do the subtraction. So like 19.
You're the math teacher.
14. So 1956 till now. 16. Yeah, about 64 years.
Yeah, so that's a lot of muscle maturity right there and muscle memory, that's for sure. So Frank Zane actually worked out during the golden era of bodybuilding, which is considered the best era of bodybuilding, period. So Frank, how was it? How did you end up in that scene in California? I mean, I've heard your story before, but I want you to tell it again. Kind of, how did you get started in lifting? How did you end up at the pinnacle? I mean, you won the Mr. Olympia, I believe, 3 times, right?
Yes. Well, I liked bodybuilding from the first time I tried it because it fulfilled a need. I wanted to get bigger and stronger, and for sports too, and also for self-defense. And I started working out with a pair of dumbbells in my basement when I was 14, and went to the YMCA as well. And went to college locally at Wilkes University and got a degree in teaching secondary education. And so I taught mathematics basically from 1969 up until what was it before that? I think it's like 1965 up till 1977, 64 to 77. I taught in Pennsylvania 1 year, New Jersey 1 year, Florida 3 years, and Los Angeles City Schools 8 years. Then I took sabbatical leave and competed and won the Olympia, and started my true life as a professional bodybuilder. I just, you know, sold courses, wrote books, did exhibitions, seminars. I still sort of do that. I have 6 publications in print right now, soon to be 7. And basically, you know, I'm an educator. That's my goal, is to teach people how to do it right. And that's what I try to do.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, you've brought one of the best physiques ever to the stage. So A lot has changed since you guys, you're one of the few bodybuilders who actually beat Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, I'm sure you hear that 1,000 times every day on how you're one of the only guys to beat Arnold, but you competed with Arnold, you trained with Arnold. And again, like I said, you were one of the best. So what would you say that what was one of the things that attributed to your success? What made your physique stand out more than everybody else's?
I think it's strong focus more than anything else, and also perseverance, sticking with something, like things I like the training. And of course, my goal, once I found out that there were things like contests, it was an incentive to improve. And I found it to be the strongest incentive. So I competed in bodybuilding shows from, like 1965 right up to 1983. And of course, I lost most of them, but I did manage to win Olympia 3 times. And Mr. America, I won. Mr. World, I won. Mr. Universe 3 times. Once in Miami, Florida, first time IFBB. And then London, 1970, and 1972, the NABI Universe. So, I've competed against a lot of the top people: Arnold, even Bill Pearl, Reg Park, Sergio Oliva. Never Larry Scott. He was one of my idols, and never Reeves, also the other idol I had. Those were before my time, but I've been around the block with the competition angle. So I do seminars here at my facility, and I teach people how to train. I have a booklet out called 31-Day Wonder Posing. Teaches you the fundamentals of posing. You can get in shape from posing. If that's all you did, if you did posing and stretching, you'd get in shape from that. Of course, doing aerobic exercise too would help. But, it's a complete it's one of the forms of exercises, which are weight training, stretching, aerobics, and posing. So those 4 things are things that I practice. Not so much posing anymore. But I do teach posing when people come here that are competitors and want to get their routine together. I show them exactly what to do.
Frank, what was your favorite and most memorable competition that you've won?
Probably the last Olympia in 1979 was my best year. I think it was my best overall condition. Had good muscle size and good definition, and everything was right. My attitude was 100%, the winning attitude. And I learned that that's how you win, is you actually have to win it ahead of time in your mind. You have to act like the winner. You can't be deluding yourself either. You have to back up that attitude with proof from what you see that you look like in photographs. And so my preparation always included having a lot of photographs taken beforehand. Turned out that I could use these for publicity and for products, which is what I do now. But also I got to see what I look like from all different angles. And I realized that nobody else does that. So it started with getting as many photo sessions with Joe Weider before competition, and we all did that. And then after that, I basically went out with my wife, Christine, on weekends and took photos. She's a great photographer. And I have a lot of color slides from that whole time I competed. And so, it would be like every 10 days or so, we'd be taking photographs, and I'd see what was good and what wasn't so good, and, take it from there.
When you see those photos now, do you look back and just miss that time?
Say that again?
When you look back at some of those photos, do you look back and think like, hey, I think I could have done something a little bit different to get more of an edge? Like, what do you think about now when you look back at those pictures and the physique that you were bringing?
It's sort of hard for me to believe I look like that. I don't criticize myself for not doing more. I mean, I think I'm way over the top. Of course, there could have been things better, but, too late now. But anyway, I learned from all of it. And it was very helpful as I was going through it to see the photos of what you look like before you get on stage. That's the only way you truly see yourself, is in photographs, because when you look in a mirror, you see yourself flip. It's a backwards image. It's not really the way you look. Close, but it's not the thing. And so photographs should be part of your, much more so than weighing yourself all the time and measuring yourself all the time and looking at percentage of body fat. These are just numbers. They're not the thing in itself. So, it's like your bodybuilding equation. You want to factor out all the things from that that don't really matter. And measurements don't matter. They're just numbers. They're describing something. And the thing they're describing is what you look like. And so you want to be able to learn to see yourself the way other people do. And for bodybuilders, that's very important. Learn to see yourself the way judges do when they see you on stage. And that's what photographs can help you do.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. You know, so I own a personal training facility, two of them actually in New York. And what we do with our clients every month is we take, in addition to taking measurements and stuff, because like you said, they're tools, we also take their pictures every month and then we compare them month to month. And you could really see a lot more changes, you know, with the pictures than you can actually what goes on with the scale and the body fat and stuff. So I agree with that 100%.
They need to see those too. That's the thing, is they need to see what their progress is.
Right.
You know, so before you can change something, you have to become aware of it. In the photos, you become aware of it.
Right. Agreed.
I
So
mean,
I want to talk about, go ahead.
When was the last time you saw your back? You never saw your back. I mean, it's always a reflection of your back you see.
Right.
So you have to basically learn to see everything, and then you could do something about it.
Right. Agreed. Frank, I know you mentioned before that you know, the training aspect of it is what you really loved. And I want to really talk about that today because I believe personally that you guys trained a lot better and a lot more intuitive than a lot of the guys train nowadays. And let's just talk about that, you know, the 70s training routine. I mean, you know, you've heard so many stories about, you know, guys were training twice a day, you know, high volume. I want to hear directly from you. What was your routine like back then? And what about it was so different than the way that these guys train now?
I did a 3-way split routine, which different ones I would do, but the one I did the most was back, biceps, forearms the first day, legs the second day, chest, shoulder, triceps the third day. So it's like by function, pulling muscles, legs, pushing muscles. Then I did ab work every day, and I did that 3 days in a row, and I usually took the 4th day off. As far as aerobics goes, I would maybe do 15 minutes of something like treadmill or stationary bike at the end of my workout. And that's what I did most of the time when I was competing. Before contest, I might double up some days, go to the gym again in the afternoon. For example, I might go to the gym and do just ab work. I'll sometimes go to the gym and do 1,000 reps on abs. I learned that because this is what some of the old guys used to do. When I moved to California, guys like Zabel, Kazuski, Joe Gold, some of the old timers from that generation before us, they're the ones that broke these principles, and it wasn't we the principles, it's what these guys were doing. And we learned from them.
Yeah, I actually read about that too. The 1,500 reps, 1,000 reps of abs every day, right? That was like the standard.
Yeah, that was one of the routines I did. There's a lot of things that worked, you know, and I also did things like Roman chair sit-ups, 25 reps, supersetted with leg raise, 25 reps, 4 sets of 25 like that, supersetted, but without resting between sets. You know,
well, it's a lot more volume than what everyone else recommends, that's for sure.
Well, you know, it worked. There's advantage to volume training. Basically, get you more defined. Had it help you add shape to the muscles. You know, and it's like that with anything. If you're learning to play a musical instrument, for example, you do high reps with it, like guitar. You pick out your chord, maybe, you know, it's a 3-chord progression. You pick out the chords and you just keep doing it over and over and over again. Then it gets to be easy. Then you get to relax and do it, and not even think about doing it. It becomes second nature. You know, you might call that the mind-muscle connection being made when that happens.
Right.
So Frank, I know you're talking about the training aspect as far as especially doing the high repetitions and, you know, getting really, really good at those things over time. You know, kind of comparing the look that you guys had, you know, back in the 70s and the 80s to what the guys are kind of bringing now. Do you attribute that mostly to the higher volume training? Is there anything that you think you guys were doing that's not being done today? Because the look is obviously significantly different. What would you kind of attribute that to?
I think it's the massive amount of drugs that are being used today. We were into that so much. You know, basically everything we got was from hard work and regularity and good nutrition. So, but I don't know much of what's going on today. I don't pay much attention to it. I'm just working on things that I can do and that I can relate to other people. And I'm all for simplicity. I just wrote a book called Get Started, and it's about getting started with training with very little equipment. And I think if you give somebody a program like that anybody can do anywhere at any time, that's a good thing. It's always good to have a routine like that for a fallback routine. Say you're traveling, good idea to have some kind of program you can do without having to go to a gym. So that's what this book is about. And I think that just helping people develop a sense of regularity in their exercise, something they do every day, some aerobic activity. I also walk probably a mile and a half, almost 45 minutes with my wife and our dog every day. You know, we go to nearby lake or to Balboa Park or in the neighborhood, like 4 different places we go to walk, and it's a good way to start your day. And
yeah, I have
not
4
running
dogs
or anything.
too, so I have 4 dogs as well. So I have to take that 45-minute walk every day as well. So I know it's actually relaxing. I love walking. I think that's the best form of cardiovascular activity you can get.
Yeah,
Relaxes
dogs
your
are great for
mind.
that. You have to do
Yeah.
it for them.
Yeah. What kind of dog do you have?
He's crossed between a English bulldog and a border collie.
Oh, very nice. Very
He's
nice. What a mix.
very unique looking.
What a mix. Frank, I want to go back and talk a little bit about one of the things that I really was dying to ask you. So what I've noticed, a lot of the guys like you, Arnold, Franco, you guys had those nice sweeping lats. Your backs just popped out from the front and you could see them, those nice, huge V-taped wide lats that would just come down to this tiny, tiny waist. And we know that the diet and, cardio and all the ab work brings the waist down. So what did you guys do specifically to bring up that sweep in the lats? Because you guys had that look that, not the bodybuilders nowadays don't have it. But whenever I look at any pictures from the golden era, that's the first thing that spots out in my mind is those wide sweeping lats. So what was kind of the trick to getting that?
Well, that was one of the first parts on me to develop when I was 14. I bought a set of dumbbells and I did things like dumbbell flies, pullovers around the world, wide grip chin-ups, and my lats came out right away. And so they weren't hard for me to develop. I mean, as far as the width goes, because I have wide clavicle and narrow waist, and my waist always stayed pretty small. And I didn't build it. I developed my obliques. I didn't build them up very much, and I did things to keep a small waist and wide lats, wide shoulders, capping the deltoids, a lot of lateral raises and rear deltoid work. And, I was always interested in the shape of things rather than how big they were. So I tried getting big, bulking up a couple of times. It didn't work for me. I just got thicker through the middle. And so I found that the best weight for me was maybe high 180s, low 190s. And so I never really focused on the weight so much rather than how I felt and how I looked in the photos.
So Frank, I have another question kind of going back to what you mentioned as far as the regularity that you like to have with working out for everybody and yourself. So everybody kind of has a little bit of a different mentality when it comes to training. Obviously your mentality is a little bit different now than when you were competing in the Olympia. As far as the mentality that you had as when you were training for, when you were competing, kind of what was like the mindset with every time you went into the gym? Was your goal, okay, every single time you went into the gym to try to do more? Was the goal to, just be instinctual and train how you felt that day? What was kind of the mindset as far as progressing over time?
It was about always getting a good pump on everything that I did, and I did things that made that happen. It might be two different conditions. If I went to the gym and I felt pretty strong, I might just take my time and train a little bit slower and work up and weight on every set. I always stretch between sets. I'd hold a stretch that stretched the body part I'm working for 15 to 20 seconds. There may be some days where I didn't feel as strong. In that case, I trained faster, where I would maybe not work up and weight and just do my reps, stretch, and get right back to it. Now, I'd get more than a minute's rest between sets. So it all depended on how I felt, but it was always in mind with getting a good pump. I always did too.
Excellent.
I always made sure that before I trained, I ate something easily digestible that was, part carb, about half carbs, half protein, or maybe a little bit more carbs, maybe 40 grams of protein, like small baked yam, and 3 soft-boiled eggs with some cheese grated on, and maybe a very small slice of whole grain toast would be my pre-workout meal. Then maybe 2 hours later, I'll be training. So it's what worked for me. You know, everybody has a different approach, and I'd say find that, stick with it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a lot of people go into the gym with a different mentality. And I think that that's kind of like a lost, you know, kind of mindset to have in the gym. I think a lot of times people, you know, with the way social media is now and the way people make these crazy videos of them lifting tons of weights and, you know, kind of showing off, you guys were more focused on how it felt.
Well, there was no internet then, and so we could focus more on what we really had to do and not get distracted. The main thing is, what I always felt is I'd go to a gym when I would, at a time when I wouldn't be distracted, because it was the focus that mattered. You know, you have to really be into the exercise and get a pump. And if that wasn't happening, not much is going to happen with your body. Then you should be able to see your progress in the mirror in the gym. What you look like pumped up is different than the way you looked when you walked in. You know, and so a little bit of that, every time you get that, a little bit stays with you over time. And so you generally start going in the direction of what you saw in the mirror. That's your future body you see in the mirror when you're pumped up. It's coming along. Keep going toward it.
No one talks about that, but it's so true. I agree with that 100%. Exactly what you just said, you know, not being distracted, going into the gym, doing what you need to do, focusing. I think that's the key word. And nowadays, like he said, with social media, it's so easy to get distracted, especially taking your phone into the gym. I mean, that's like Mickey Mouse stuff, you know?
My goal was not to talk to anybody in the gym.
It's a great goal.
Well, you know,
that must have been tough, actually.
No, put earbuds in my ears. Didn't have to connect any, just put my other end in my pocket. And I would just ignore people, you know. I mean, what was more important? You know, having social etiquette and being popular with people and talking to them. And I mean, you're there to work out. Talk later. A lot of times people come up to me in the gym and ask me to, you know, like this one guy from Germany came up to me one time and he had 14 postcards for me to autograph so he could send to his friends. All right, never worked out. So I said, you know, wait till I get done. I can't do it. I'm working out. Wait till I get done and I'll do it. And then it was an hour and a half later and he wasn't there then. So he missed out. You know, stuff like that going on all the time. That's why it's best to go to the gym. If you're really serious, go when there aren't many people there. Or if people there are very serious about working out. That kind of atmosphere was at Gold's Gym in the late 60s, early 70s, around starting at 7 to 9 a.m. So I always aimed to be there at 7, you know. And then a lot of times you want to psych somebody out, you're all pumped up at 9 o'clock and you're working out and competitors walking in. He sees you pumped up and he gets worried. But then he trains harder too.
So Frank,
what was your favorite body part to train? Sorry, Pete.
Say it again.
What was your favorite body part to train?
I don't know. I didn't really have any favorites. And none of them were really that hard. I just learned the secret. Like for example, when I started out, my thighs were very responsive because I was a good squatter and I squatted, you know, a reasonable amount. My calves weren't as developed, but over the years, I learned how to develop my calves. And basically I learned that you have to take your calves to a burn on every set. And that should occur ideally maybe on the 15th rep. So I'd always do between say 15 and 25 reps on calf work to get a burn on every set. And I found that maybe any body part to grow, if you hit it twice a week, every 4th day, or even every 5th day, if you train it real hard, if you want an area to grow, it's better to train it less frequently, but do more. Train harder and heavier, get deep so that you get sore for a couple of days. Then it will grow. If you train it every day, it's not going to grow. You're going to tone it. You maybe get better shape and definition. And there's a time for that. So it all depends on what you're after.
Right. Go ahead, Pete. I know you had a question. I cut you off.
Yeah. So actually, you know, just hearing you talk about the way you would train and kind of your perspective, and you know, it seems like when you trained, you were very, you know, introverted. You were focused on, you know, training the muscles, being in the muscles, getting a good pump, you know, focusing on that. Did you ever train with training partners? Were you training mostly by yourself? What was kind of your, you know?
I did both.
Yeah.
You know, the thing about it is to get the most from a training partner, he should be at least on your level, or it'd be even better for you, a little bit ahead of your level. And there aren't many people around like that. And so you have to learn to self-reliance. Basically, most of my workouts were by myself, but I was motivated enough to do it. You know, but there were times, like for example, I had very good training experiences with my wife, training at Gold's Gym. I remember 1979, before the Olympia, we would go there right when they're closing, and then we'd stay after they closed, and we'd be there for a couple hours working out. It was very focused and nobody around. She was very methodical in the training too. And then with Arnold, he was one of the hardest training partners around. He's very focused.
Yeah,
I don't know what he's like now, but in those days, he was extremely focused.
You always hear that, but what does that actually mean? So he was focused. What did that mean? Like, describe that feeling. Because you said you were just as equally as focused. So what does that actually mean for someone who may have not ever trained at that level? What's an insight to that?
Well, when you're doing something, that's what you're doing. You're not doing anything else mentally, especially. You're not thinking about something else. Basically, what I would just count the reps. You know, count reps, and that's basically was my focus. And I would match that with the sensation I felt from the exercise in the muscle group I was working. And that was it. It was basically nothing going on in my mind. I wasn't thinking about, you know, something else entirely outside the gym. I was in the moment, present-centered, focused on what I was doing.
Right. It's awesome. It's almost like a Zen kind of principle where you're actually focused and in the moment and actually there, present. Most people don't know how to do that. I think especially now, the smartphone is a really cool thing, but it's definitely a deterrent from everything in life. People just get distracted by everything. It's insane. So I think you guys were very, very lucky to not have that stuff.
Like, well, it's good if you start smarter. I mean, I have one right here, but it's good if you use it in its right context and not having to rely on it for everything. I mean, I find myself looking at it a lot during the day, but when I'm working out, I'm not.
Yeah. It's
not in the room.
Frank, so you're in your 70s now, and you're still training every day. You're still as active as possible. And, you know, some of our clients listening to this are in their 40s, 50s, even 60s. And some people, and I see it a lot more nowadays, it just seems like people, once they hit like, you know, late 50s, early 60s, they're done. Like they're just that mentality, they kind of just check out. So you've been training all this time. So how has any tips on how your training has evolved as you've gotten older, and you know, what are the keys to longevity in this?
I train lighter. I do less. I stay on a good diet. You know, I'm on a relatively low carbohydrate diet. I always try to get a little more protein than carbs every day. And so my carbs, probably about 150 grams of protein a day and about 120 on the carbs. Most of the carbs are early in the day. And I get enough rest. For me, which is about 5 hours at night, and then I meditate during the day. And I have something I call high-tech meditation, where I use light sound machines, and it's like it's a form of meditation with apparatus. Mm-hmm. And so I do that, and a good half-hour meditation is like a good hour of sleep or more. You know, it depends on how deep you can get into it. So I think it's good. It's good to learn how to relax tension and maintain a sense of tranquility as much as you can during the day. So I try to do that.
So Frank, everything as far as the training to the lifestyle to the nutrition to the rest and everything that you're doing, it all sounds very intuitive. You know, it sounds, you know, like, especially over the years, you've probably developed this and gotten better at it. You know, kind of going back to the training a little bit, you know, you mentioned that when you go in the gym, the focus is to get a pump. You know, depending on how you're feeling that day, your approach to accomplishing that might be a little bit different. Did you ever, you know, during your career have more of a rigid structure? Like if you were to say, you know, I'm training legs for instance today, you know, I'm going to do 10 sets or 12 sets, or was it kind of just every time you went into the gym, it would be whatever approach would work that day?
I always had a definite routine in mind on what I was going to do. And if you're interested in that, I have books out on that. One's called, Mind, Body, Spirit, the Personal Training Diaries. It's like a year's worth of workouts. It's not like continuous for 1 year. It's from the best workouts over a 4-year period of time, arranged sort of in order from easy to hard. And I have some other ones now that I wrote more recently called 91 Day Wonder Body. It's 3 months of what to do every day. It's user-friendly, meant for person to use it. It's a workout journal. And so I think a combination of my 2 books, one is, can you hold on a second? I want to show you these. I'm right here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hold on. Back. Okay. I've had this DVD out for quite some time.
How old are you there? Oh, 60. Look at you. Wow,
Yeah,
you look phenomenal, man.
There. Yeah, this has been around for a long time. Then I have a workout book. It's 91 Day Wonder Body. Tells you what to do every single day. And there's a place for you to write in there. Of course, there's text, but then there's spaces for the workout.
Oh, cool.
And then there's my textbook, massive 436 pages of everything that I know is in this book.
Oh, that's cool. I'm going to head over to your site after this and pick that up. Maybe you could autograph it for
Good
me.
information, I don't bullshit. I tell people the way it is so they can do it. I'm an educator. I'm not trying to hide anything.
Right. Well, I don't think there's any secrets to bodybuilding anyway. I mean, if you're consistent, you'll get some type of result if you're consistent. The difference is if you're, working out optimally and, the little X's and O's don't matter. But the main thing, like you said before, is just having that routine and being regimented and doing something every day.
Yeah, it's regularity out of routine and always getting a good workout. I sort of put in, I had what I call the bodybuilding equation. It's your results are equal to the product of your exercise, your positive attitude, your recuperation, your relaxation, and your nutrition, EARN.
I love that.
And the better you do at those, the better result you're going to get. And it's an equation. These are factors. A factor is something you multiply. And so if you need to score 100% in each area, then it's 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 equal 1 or 100%.
Right.
But even if you just did 90% of each one, it'd be 9 times 9 times 9 times 9. That would be 64%, although 64%. So you see the difference. If you really have to go at it, when you do it, you have to do it.
Right. Well, actually, this brings up a good point because I was actually wondering about this. Have you ever in your career, based on what you just said, have you ever went through a period of time where you're just like kind of in like a rut, a training rut where you're not getting any results? And how did you kind of pull yourself out of that? Because obviously you can't make gains forever, right?
I think the way I really got around that for all those years was I was on a yearly schedule where I would peak in the autumn, and everything was geared for that. I didn't try to be in shape in February. Around the holidays, I was in shape. I mean, I was doing something, but it was more maintenance training. What I like to do, let's say from the period of November, December, January, February, was to specialize on weak areas, whatever that was, and stay on a good diet and do something, but just not the right thing. And then for 6 months before my peaking date would be, let's see, April, May, and June, the training there would be regular, just hard enough to be in good enough shape to train for July, August, September, and then peak in October. I just followed that schedule pretty much every year. So there really wasn't, if there was a downtime, it was scheduled. And I didn't fret over it. It wasn't unplanned, or it didn't strike me as, not realizing what it was. It was all intentional and planned.
I love that. And you were known for being one of the only bodybuilders back then who would write everything down and be kind of meticulous with everything. So I think that has shown that
yeah,
I think that method works really well, because then you can learn.
Yeah, it
from
does.
mistakes
Keeping
a
a
lot
journal
faster.
works. And that's what this 91 day one, that's my cell phone, a 3-month program every day. You're right in there and it's your workout log. That way you can see what it is. I went to school a lot. I have a master's degree in psychology. I had degrees from 3 different universities. And then I took a lot of courses on the side too. One of them was called Add a Journal Workshop. is by keeping a journal. That's pretty much what I do. At least a workout journal, and then also a nutritional journal is good too.
Yeah.
The rule for that is if you eat it, you have to write it down.
Right.
Then you got to look it up. It's not that hard to look up what's in food. You just ask your cell phone.
I know, it tells you.
Very true.
Frank,
For example, hey Siri, how much carbohydrate is in a 8-ounce baked potato?
Okay, I found this on the web for how much carbohydrate is in an 8-ounce baked potato. Check it out.
There you go.
Oh, I got to look. It says 33 grams of carbs in an 8-ounce baked potato. So
spot on.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you write in your journal way back then? So then we're talking the 70s. This is before you even learned anything. So what was in your training journal? What did you actually keep track of?
The exercises, the weight I used, and how many reps I did with it. And then total sets for each body part. I'd say for back, it would be between 12 and 15 sets. And even more if I was competing, maybe go up to 20 sets. I'd add sets and exercises as I got closer to peak condition. For back, for example, I would do at least 3 different exercises. And then I moved to 4 and even 5. For smaller body parts like biceps, I might only do 2, not as many sets.
So you would basically keep track of how many sets you guys did per body part. That was kind of how it was. Everybody did that?
No. I think I was the only one.
Smart one.
But,
I think you were the smart one.
Well, I have a scientific, that's what I did in my chemistry classes. I was doing stuff like that. So I just, my scientific training, because I was a chemistry major for 2 years, and then went into education, it was basically keeping track of things. And so I used the same approach with my training.
Right. And I know Arnold I watched an interview with Arnold, and he was talking about how he used to work out with guys who just were kind of going through the motions. Do you have any stories about guys who would just like come to Gold's Gym to see you guys train and try to train with you and just be like half-assing it at all? Was it really that common?
Not a lot, but I remember one guy, he had long blonde hair like Dave Draper, and he watched what Dave did. And he did it exactly the way Dave did it. And you started to look like Dave. So there's something to that, something to it. If you pick somebody that's your type in your structure and you emulate what they do as far as the movements, you can start get the development they have.
Right. All right, Frank, Pete, so that's what we got to do. We got to copy everything Frank had done.
That's it.
Frank, I heard the story about how you came up with the vacuum pose. You kind of just did it one day in the gym, and I think it was Arnold that turned to you and said, hey, that looks really good. You should keep doing it. So I know that you're kind of known for that vacuum pose. Actually, 2-part question. 1, can you still do that now? And 2, what was kind of the secret to developing that vacuum as deep as you had gotten it? Because I could do the vacuum, but nowhere near that.
Well, you have to practice it a lot to get a deep vacuum. And there's like sort of a 4-stage thing I went through. One was the easiest way to do that would be hanging upside down or on a steep incline, like on a traction table, because then you get into system gravity. Then you exhale as much as you can, tension your abs to get all the air out of your stomach, out of your lungs. And then instead of inhaling, you simply pull in your gut. And then you hold it like that for longer and longer periods of time. It's also a good way to alleviate hunger if you're on a diet and you want to stretch the time between eating. Now, that's really what works on the diet, is not stay hungry longer.
Right.
Stay hungry longer between meals, because that time that you're actually hungry is when you're burning fat. And so to make that go a little longer, I would do stomach vacuums when I started getting hungry, and I'd put off eating for a good hour sometimes. Now, this is something that guys today won't do because they're too busy stuffing their face with food every second they're eating. I never did that. Of course, I was never big like that, but then I never had a big West from doing it this way. So, the vacuum was very good. So I'd start out with on a decline or upside down, and then I'd go to lying flat. Then I'd go with standing, bent over at the waist with my hands on my knees. And then I would go with my hands behind my head, which is the vacuum pose. And then from there, I would go from vacuum pose into abdominal pose. And I did that in competition. If you can pull that off, it looks really good. You do ab pose, and then you do vacuum. It's good exercise going back and forth from abs to vacuum.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of control. And another thing that helps make that vacuum pose was developing the serratus muscles. No, there's only, I think maybe only 3 people that had really good serratus. There was me, of course, because I worked them hard. And they got pretty thick from doing dumbbell pullovers. Bill Pearl, I think I learned that movement from him. I saw pictures of him doing that exercise lying across a bench. And Mike Mentzer from doing it on an Alice pullover machine. A good vacuum, pose with the arms behind the head. It's a matter of practice. Anybody can get it better if they practice it.
Right. Like
That's
anything
the
else,
key.
reps. Everything
Yeah.
in life is reps. Reps. All right, Frank, before we...
Spaced practice. You
Right.
practice it, then you rest. You do it over time like that, and it keeps getting better and better.
Right. All right. I want to leave off. I have two more questions for you. So one, we didn't discuss nutrition, which is obviously the most important part of all this. So let's talk about the nutrition when you won the Olympia. What was your nutrition like back then?
Well, I would get, let's see, I think a typical diet in those days was I'd get over 200 grams of protein, up to 250 grams of protein, and then under 70 grams of carbs a day.
So really,
my fat intake was pretty low too, but I really didn't try to restrict my fats a whole lot. I just didn't use butter or cream. I didn't really indulge in pure fats, but I didn't try to keep it down too low. And I do that for 3 days in a row. Then on the 4th day, I would increase my carbs as much as I needed to if I wasn't getting a pump. Sometimes on the 3rd day of that routine, especially if I was going real low on carbs, maybe 50 grams of carbs a day, by the 3rd day, I wasn't getting much of a pump in my exercises. So I would increase my carbs when I felt that.
Yeah.
And my favorite carbs basically was baked yams because they had a glycemic index of 50. That's perfect. Also, fruit is good glycemic index. Not so much fruit juice, but fruit.
Yeah.
All glycemic index in the 40s.
Right. Awesome.
So I still do that. I mean, my diet's not heavy carbs ever.
And I remember you said you were trying to bulk up at one point. How much did you get up to at that point? What was the heaviest you've ever gotten?
The most I weighed actually was about 220, but I was really fat at that body weight. I looked okay at 205 in 1982. I have some photos. There's an Instagram photo of me, like side black and white tricep shot at 205. I was in pretty hard condition at that weight because I was training heavy too.
Yeah.
But most of the time it was under 200.
Yeah. So size doesn't matter. You won the Olympia. How much did you weigh?
The last time I weighed 190, I think 191.
Yep.
That's
So
when I
there you
weighed
go.
in for the show.
There you go. All right, Frank. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We really, really appreciate your time. And this has been an awesome, again, for me, especially, I'm a huge Frank Zane fan, and I just appreciate you coming on. So I guess let's if we could leave everyone with one tidbit on success in exercising, bodybuilding. What would be your biggest tip that you can give out to someone aspiring to be Frank Zane, to look like Frank Zane?
Well, the best way, of course, is to frequent my website, frankzane.com, where all the relevant stuff is contained. But the main advice is just stick with it. Get feedback on what you look like, keep records, correlate what you look like with what you're doing and how you're eating, and your attitude, and just keep going. It's all anybody does. I think if somebody doesn't get there, it's because they lose interest and they find other things to do. They're not really serious enough about it. They don't want it enough. So if you really want it, just stick with it and find ways that you can improve what you're doing. I remember when I was still living in Santa Monica, I noticed that I did better in competition, the better my living situation would be. And so finally we moved up to a beautiful condominium in Santa Monica, 1976. And that's when I had a great year that year because everything was just right. So, make everything that is related to your training and your lifestyle and your living as good as possible. And then, think positive and, be regular in your workouts and always get a good pump. Pay attention to your nutrition. Don't commit crimes. Stay out of jail. Don't engage in risky behaviors. Don't do stupid stuff. Don't take dares from people. Don't arm wrestle. Don't lift heavy weights overhead on a dare. Reminds me of a story. I was doing Roman chair sit-ups in Gold's Gym. It was 1970s. Franco Colombo walks in with his tight pants and high-heeled shoes. And there was an Olympic set there with 245s on each side, 225. And I said, Franco, I'll give you $5 if you can do a squat or a split snatch with that weight. And he did it. He didn't even want to, went over and did it. It's amazing. So I had to pay him $5, but it was worth it.
Awesome. Frank, thank you so much for your time. I'm definitely going to head on over to your website. I want to pick up that your bodybuilding manual book. You just got to autograph it for me, all right?
I certainly will.
All right.
You'll like
awesome.
it. Okay, well, thanks for the interview. Good luck with you guys.
Thank you so
All right,
much,
thank
buddy.
you, Frank.
Talk soon.
Adios. Take care.
Pleasure.